My boss threatened to fire me for following safety protocol. So I became his top technician and slowly orchestrated his downfall. By the time he realized what was happening, he was drenched in sewage, just like the respect we had for him. If you've ever dreamed of turning quiet humiliation into poetic justice, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and let us know in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? Because trust me, what you're about to hear is not just payback. It's a masterclass in patience, power, and a well-deserved downfall. They told me to expect dirt, danger, and a good paycheck. They didn't warn me about the man who'd nearly destroy my career before it ever had a chance to begin. My name's Riley Cortez. I was 26, the only woman in my technician class, and just a few months into my job at Central Flow Services, a national sewage and drainage company known for its brutal hours, unspeakable jobs, and surprisingly good money. We weren't the kind of people who got invited to dinner parties. We were the people who got called when your basement started to smell like rot. But I loved it. I loved the precision of diagnostics, the camaraderie of the truck radio chatter, and the silent nods of respect from the old-timers when you pulled your weight. I earned my boots, my grime, and my bruises. What I didn't expect was a snake in a supervisor's uniform. His name was Darren Blake. Slick hair, iron shirts, the kind of guy who never carried a wrench but always carried a clipboard. He wasn't a leader. He was a puppet master. And unfortunately for me, he controlled the schedule. Darren worshipped power like a religion. If you were one of the senior earners, guys pulling 5 figures in commissions, he'd practically polish your boots. You need time off? Done. Want a lighter shift? I'll make it happen. But if you were new? Or worse, a woman? You were invisible until he needed someone to clean literal filth. I saw it early on. The way he talked over people during dispatch. The condescending sweetheart he'd let slip when no one else was around. The casual jokes about how women don't last long in the sewers. I bit my tongue. I smiled. I waited. Then came the night that started it all. I was 3 months in and assigned to a mortuary job. Picture this, a busted sewage line in a building filled with embalming fluid and God knows what. The smell alone could make a grown man weep. But it was high commission, hazard pay, so I suited up, masked up, and got it done. 1 hour, and I'd earned nearly $200. But by the end, I was lightheaded, my skin tingling. Whatever chemicals had been down there weren't normal. I called Darren. Hey, I'm heading home, I said. The fumes were strong, my head spinning. Not safe to keep driving. There was a beat of silence. Then came the snarl. You walk off this shift, Riley, and you'll be in a disciplinary meeting tomorrow morning. Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was months of being brushed off. I said quietly, can't wait to see you there, Darren. Then I hung up. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. My stomach twisted with anxiety. Was I really about to lose this job over doing the safe thing? But the next morning, I walked in early. Not to apologize, but to fight. I requested HR. I requested the company's safety officer. I waited, silent, as Darren strutted into the meeting room, full of smug confidence. He thought he had me. Thought I was just another rookie who'd back down when pressed. But I didn't come empty-handed. I pulled out the employee handbook. Page by page, I read aloud, protocol on hazardous exposure, clauses about lightheadedness, company policy that said if you feel unsafe, you stop. It even stated they would pay for your transportation home in such cases. I looked at the safety officer. Was I wrong? He shook his head. You did exactly what we ask our employees to do. Then HR chimed in, Darren, this meeting shouldn't have been disciplinary. She followed procedure. The look on Darren's face, his smirk twitching into something small and embarrassed, was everything. But then came the moment that would define our dynamic forever. The regional manager had been sitting quietly in the corner. Now, he leaned forward and said, "Riley, could you give us the room?" I stood. As I left, I heard his voice go from professional to furious. I didn't hear the words, but I heard the volume. And I heard the silence that followed. That should have been the end. But I'm not wired that way. You see, I come from a long line of women who smiled at men's mistakes, tucked them into neat boxes, and let karma handle it. I don't believe in karma. I believe in spreadsheets, strategies, and long games. I wasn't going to survive Darren. I was going to dismantle him. From that day on, I worked like a machine. I said yes to every tough job. I climbed into crawl spaces the guys refused. I pulled 12-hour shifts and still made it home to shower and send out next-day diagnostics. My paycheck soared. My name started to circulate. Riley Cortez, Rookie of the Year. Darren tried to ignore me. Pretend it didn't sting. But I saw it. Every month, I rose. Every month, he fell. Then came year 2. I made Salesman of the Year. Darren was officially on probation for interpersonal conduct. That's when I started recruiting. Not just for payback, but for documentation. Every new hire that came through, I introduced myself personally. I gave them my number. I told them to text me anytime Darren said something shady, denied a day off, or played one of his manipulative little games. I built a quiet network of truth tellers. And with their help, I began pressing buttons Darren didn't know he had. We didn't lie. We didn't fabricate. We just knew him. We knew the words that made him snap. "Can I get next weekend off? I've got a doctor's note, can you approve this sick day? Sorry, I need more time on this assignment." Innocent questions, strategic pressure points. He started unraveling. Once a week, someone went to HR. Another to the branch manager. The reports stacked up. The supervisors started watching him. And finally, the branch manager called Darren in. I wasn't in the room. But I heard the outcome the same afternoon. He was being demoted. Effective immediately, Darren Blake was no longer a supervisor. And he was being transferred to my shift. I won't lie, I celebrated. Quietly. A drink alone at my apartment. A toast to poetic beginnings. But I also knew this was just Act 1. Because now? He was mine. The first morning Darren showed up on my shift, he looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. No pressed shirt. No clipboard. Just a faded uniform and boots that looked too clean for what was coming. I didn't greet him. I didn't smirk. I didn't even nod. That was worse than gloating. You see, on our shift, there were no desk jobs. No calls taken from air-conditioned offices. Out here, we earned every penny with sweat, blood, and the occasional roach down our shirt collar. And now, Darren was just another tech in rotation. But our supervisor, Donnie, a wiry old-timer with a nicotine voice and a wicked sense of humor, made sure Darren's welcome was unforgettable. Flooded basements? Darren. Backed-up retirement homes? Darren. Crawl spaces filled with possum corpses and mold? Oh, you bet, Darren. We weren't cruel. We were strategic. Darren had spent years handing out misery. Now he had to live in it. And every single time he crawled back into the van reeking of raw sewage, I made sure someone asked the same question on the open radio, "Hey Darren, missing your clipboard yet?" It became a joke. A ritual. And he couldn't escape it. But here's the thing, humiliation doesn't land the same when you're alone. So I made sure Darren never felt alone. I had everyone call him. 30 different techs, some who barely knew him, called and texted Darren over the next few weeks. Hey, can I swap shifts? Hey, can I take Saturday off? Hey, I heard you're the guy to talk to. Every time, he had to explain, I'm not a supervisor anymore. Over. And over. And over again. It chipped away at him. One cut at a time. He started arriving late. His eyes were glassy, his hands shaking. He didn't laugh. Didn't talk. He just showed up, got drenched in filth, and drove off without saying goodbye. Then came the dispatch day. Every week, we got the roster for upcoming jobs. I happened to be in the room when Donnie grinned and said, "We've got a gem for Darren." Overflowing septic tank. Middle of a hoarding house. No ventilation. I said nothing. But I made a mental note, bring air freshener. For me, not him. When Darren came back from that call, he didn't even make it inside the building. He sat in the truck for 30 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. Eventually, he walked in, threw his gloves on the floor, and slumped into a chair. That was when I saw it. The crack. Not in his voice. Not in his posture. In his eyes. He was breaking. But still, not enough. The next part of the plan wasn't physical. It was psychological. I called 2 of my closest friends on the team. Both had personal scores to settle with Darren. One had a daughter who passed from cancer. Darren had tried to get him fired for grieving too long. The other had secured a massive hotel contract, only to have Darren assign it to someone else out of spite. We didn't want revenge. We wanted truth. So we hosted a party. Not a retirement party. Not a goodbye. A celebration. We printed signs, "He's gone," and "Freedom flushed." We ordered pizza and cake. We rented out a bar near the office. We even put flyers up at the dispatch board so every shift would see. And we did it all knowing Darren was planning to quit. His final week was coming up. We knew he was handing in his notice. So we made sure the entire office knew before he even finished his last job. Then, the day arrived. I'll never forget it. Darren walked in with a folded piece of paper, his 2-week notice. He looked tired. Hollow. But maybe, just maybe, hoping for dignity. That's when he saw the signs. The balloons. The cake with "Good riddance," Darren spelled in brown icing. The bar receipt on the wall, signed, "Courtesy of the people who survived you." He looked around, confused. Then, hopeful. "You guys didn't have to," he said, almost smiling. "I appreciate." I held up a hand. "It's not a going-away party, Darren," I said. "It's a you're-gone party. Why would we invite the reason we're celebrating?" The room went dead quiet. Then someone, maybe Donnie, snorted. Someone else coughed to hide a laugh. Darren's face flushed. He turned to leave. And I let him go. We didn't throw the party to humiliate him face to face. That was never the goal. The goal was for him to know. To feel it in his bones. To understand that the respect he craved, the approval he twisted himself to earn, had never been real. It had been fear. And now that fear was gone. What was left? Nothing. Only 20 of us showed up at the bar that night. But it was the best party I'd ever attended. We raised our glasses. We shared stories. We didn't talk about the filth, the long hours, or the aching backs. We talked about survival. And justice. And how sweet it is when the villain writes his own ending, and you just turn the page. By the next morning, the signs were gone, the cake was stale, and Darren Blake was just a ghost story whispered between radio crackles. But I knew we weren't done. Not really. See, the party wasn't just to say goodbye. It was a symbol, a message to every technician who had ever been belittled, denied, or broken down by someone who wore a title but never earned it. The sign read "Freedom Flushed," but what it meant was, we saw what he did. And we didn't forget. And neither did I. There was still a part of me unsettled, like a hairline crack in concrete. Why had Darren been like that? Why had someone with so little reason for cruelty chosen it so often? I didn't want to just watch him fall. I wanted to understand why he was ever allowed to rise. So I started asking questions. I called old friends, current coworkers, even a few who'd transferred to other branches. What I heard stunned me. And for the first time, I realized my revenge wasn't just about me. It was about every one of them. The first call I made was to Marcus. He was one of the other guys who helped throw the party. His daughter had passed away from cancer just over a year before Darren quit. I remembered the pain in his eyes that never quite faded, even when he smiled. "Marcus," I asked gently, "what exactly happened with Darren? Why did you join me in all this?" The silence on the line stretched. Then he spoke. "Because he tried to fire me. Twice." He told me how Darren had pulled him into a meeting during the worst week of his life. His daughter had just been hospitalized again. Marcus had taken time off, family leave, legit and approved. Darren didn't care. He said my grief was affecting morale, Marcus told me, voice bitter. Said if I couldn't compartmentalize, maybe I wasn't fit for field work. I gripped the phone tighter. Did HR do anything? HR let it slide. Said he didn't technically break any rules. But they gave me a warning. A warning. For being a father. I didn't respond. I just sat there, heart pounding, rage crawling up my throat. Then I called Devin. Devin was quiet, methodical, the guy who never talked back, never missed a call. He was the one who landed that $64,000 hotel chain contract. A massive win. And Darren reassigned it. I was too green, Devin said, his voice flat. That's what he told the manager. But my supervisor fought it. Said I was ready. Darren went around him. Gave the job to one of his favorites. And guess what? That guy fumbled it. Lost the contract entirely. Did you file a complaint? Devin gave a short, humorless laugh. I was new. I didn't want a target on my back. I heard this line more than once. From Jenny, a single mom who got a write-up for insubordination after asking for her sick child's daycare schedule to be accommodated. From Carlos, who had a vacation approved, only to have Darren put him on emergency on-call during the trip, ruining his chance to travel, again, all within policy, but just barely. Then there was Steven. Steven was a mess. Always had been. His van looked like a garbage fire. Most of us operated out of organized chaos. But Darren? He gave Steven a formal citation for it. A citation. For a dirty van. When every van in the yard looked like a second-hand scrapyard. It was never about rules. It was about control. About kicking the legs out from under anyone who didn't bend quick enough. And yet, for years, he got away with it. Why? Because Darren was smart. Not competent, smart. He knew when to smile, when to charm, and most importantly, who not to mess with. The top earners? He gave them gifts at Christmas. The regional manager's assistant? She got flowers after her cat died. He was a professional manipulator. He knew how to play the image game. But people like me? We weren't worth playing. Until one day, we were. And that, I realized, was the final twist of the knife. Darren never changed. He never evolved or apologized or even noticed the pain he caused. The only thing that shifted was our value. When I became a top earner, he tried to placate me. When I had the network, he tried to avoid me. But by then, it was too late. Because the woman he ignored was the same woman who buried him. Not with lies. With receipts. I compiled every story. Created a private drive. Redacted names, dates, locations. But the pattern was clear. And if he ever tried to get another job in this industry, I'd be ready. Not out of spite. Out of duty. Darren didn't deserve a clean slate. He deserved a mirror. And I was going to make sure the reflection stared back for the rest of his life. I never touched him. Not once. But I drowned Darren Blake in his own behavior, one complaint, one policy violation, one ignored consequence at a time. And I did it without ever raising my voice or breaking a single rule. You want to know what real power looks like? It's not yelling. It's not slamming fists or getting even with drama. It's smiling when they underestimate you, then quietly rearranging the chessboard so that no matter where they step next, they fall. After collecting the stories, I did one final thing before letting go of the past. I wrote a letter. Not to Darren. To the corporate office. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even detailed. I simply said, I believe your former supervisor Darren Blake may seek employment with another branch. Before you approve him for any internal promotions or transfers, I urge you to review his record at our location and speak to HR regarding the internal complaints filed over the last 2 years. I signed it, attached a link to the drive, anonymous, of course, and moved on. Closure doesn't always look like a final confrontation. Sometimes, it's just peace. But Darren? He didn't get peace. 3 months after his last shift, word started trickling back. He'd applied at a nearby branch. They called him in. Seemed excited until someone on the hiring team noticed his demotion on the system and flagged it. Suddenly, the call went cold. They found someone else. Another branch? Same story. Eventually, someone from corporate HR called my branch directly. Can someone speak about Darren Blake's performance and departure? Donnie, bless his nicotine-stained soul, took the call himself. I don't know exactly what he said. But I know that after that, Darren's application stopped. I'd hear rumors. That he took a job in landscaping. That he moved to another state. That he started a business cleaning carpets. I didn't care. Whatever it was, he wasn't managing people anymore. He wasn't destroying people anymore. And that was enough. But something interesting started happening after Darren left. The atmosphere changed. Dispatch was less hostile. Supervisors were less guarded. People started talking more, helping each other more. Our team grew closer. We stopped watching our backs and started watching each other's progress. New hires stuck around longer. Old hires smiled more. And slowly, I realized something that made me sit back one night in my truck and just breathe for a full 5 minutes. We didn't just get rid of Darren. We redefined what leadership looked like. It wasn't about being in charge. It was about showing up. We'd all learned that from watching him do the opposite. He left a legacy, but not the kind he wanted. He was the cautionary tale. The one everyone referenced in whispered warnings to the next would-be tyrant. And me? I didn't want a title. I didn't need one. I was the tech who'd been threatened, humiliated, underestimated, and then turned it all into a coordinated takedown that reshaped the branch culture. Some called it petty. I called it necessary. And poetic. Because the same van he mocked me for keeping too clean was now the highest performing unit in the district. The same radio he used to bark through now echoed with laughter. And the same woman he once tried to silence now had every manager's ear. Not because I chased status, but because I earned respect. The real kind. The kind Darren never understood. There's a quiet power in being the one they don't see coming. In standing at the back of the room while your enemies walk in confident and leave in pieces. And every time I see a young tech hesitate, second-guess themselves, or look at their reflection in the chrome of a filthy pipe wondering if they belong, I tell them this. You don't have to scream to be powerful. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to know who you are. And wait for the moment when that's enough to tear down everything they built on fear. The night of the party, I remember standing by the window of the bar, a half-eaten slice of cake in one hand, the cold sweat of a soda bottle in the other. Outside, the world kept spinning, cars passed, people laughed on the sidewalk, life moved on. But inside, something had shifted. It wasn't the pizza. Or the streamers we taped with duct tape to the cracked walls. It wasn't even the cake that read "Good Riddance, Darren" in a color that suspiciously resembled sewer sludge. It was the air. It was lighter. For the first time in years, we weren't watching over our shoulders. We were laughing. And the laughter wasn't nervous. It wasn't followed by a quick glance to see who might be listening. It was real. Loud. Free. I walked past the table where Marcus sat, smiling wider than I'd seen since the funeral. Devin was at the jukebox. Jenny had a drink in one hand and was mid-story, her audience hanging on every word. And me? I wasn't the hero. I was just the reminder that no one needed to stay small to make someone else feel big. When Darren quit, there were no fireworks. No company-wide emails. Just an erased name on a schedule and a hole where intimidation used to live. But this party, this was our closure. People asked me afterward, did he ever show up? No. And that was perfect. Because the party was never about him. It was about reclaiming what he took. Respect. Peace. Time. The right to feel safe at work. To ask for a day off without fear. To grieve. To breathe. You can't understand what it means to be free from someone until you realize how many hours of your life were spent calculating how to exist under them. And once you're free, you protect that space like sacred ground. So when new supervisors were hired, we made sure to speak up early. Support the good ones. Document the bad. Mentor the fresh techs who didn't know what old Darren used to be like. We didn't just eliminate toxicity. We built immunity. A year later, we got a new hire, just a kid, barely 21. Eager, curious, bright-eyed. I watched him walk in on his first day, holding a thermos too big for his hand and a notebook filled with questions. I pulled him aside and said, "You ever feel like someone's treating you unfairly, you come to me. We've got your back." He blinked. "Thanks, but why?" And I smiled. Because someone once tried to break us. And we learned how to rebuild. I didn't tell him about Darren. That story wasn't his burden. But it was part of our roots. The story of a man who mistook silence for submission. Who thought cruelty equaled control. And who left thinking he was fired for bad luck, never realizing he was outplayed by the very people he thought too weak to matter. The revenge wasn't loud. It didn't go viral. No one got arrested. No windows were smashed. No careers were destroyed beyond what karma dictated. But it was perfect. Because in the end, the man who used his authority to shrink others, shrank himself. And the woman he once mocked? She outlasted him. Outranked him. Outlived the legend he tried to write. And instead of ending with an explosion, we ended it with a party. Pizza, laughter, a few too many drinks. A cake with a name he didn't deserve to eat. And 30 people who finally got to say, "We made it." Without you. So if you ever wonder what revenge looks like when done right, it looks like peace. It smells like sweat and victory and a job site that doesn't reek of fear. And it feels like knowing you never have to pretend to be smaller just to survive. Not anymore. Not ever again.